or Silver Surfer on the Silver Surfboard. Do you know why Superman was so strong? Because he was half alien. One consists of a bug, the other are different. One is the postal service. So how many different ways can they achieve that without one? The postal service is now part of the high school, and that's scary because these are professionals dealing with children. So I'm probably not ever gonna. And this is different types of leaves. Comes in different genetics. This is a sticker of thing I had that says what could go wrong from here to there. You have to be wary. I've been looking around all day to make sure nothing bad happens. And when you hear a sound of a clown, it could be a hypersonic teleport from an alien. And when I saw kids playing baseball and they all ran away, I was waiting for zombies to come because what if they were running because they saw them? And then I saw it was too late. I'd have to make a barricade or run. If I made the barricade, I'd try and save the kids and then run. But if there was too many zombies, I'd just get out of there before I got turned into one. I think the Lorentz contraction has to do every time you move, and that means everything in your body moving as well. If you drove by a grave site or just walked past it, where the grave starts and finishes, what if your phone went off? It turned off or got stuck. What would that even mean? A, that shouldn't happen, but B, if it did, it would be calibrated to its environment. So you know where you get the internet is coming through the airwaves of the closest tower and it's pinging off of it. Well, then that would mean that those bodies in the ground were conducting some electricity. Shocking. And then mummies can't come back to life after they're gone, or zombies. But if they did, then that would be the electricity coming off those grave bodies, which are in a symmetry to the gravestones because they're all 6 feet deep. Well, then you would have yourself a either like a frozen thing, a software issue. It would go into your phone, and that would be how a scary movie would start. When someone says big things come in little packages, the only other truth in that logic is that less is more. And this is like in stocks where you buy low and sell high. This is so outlandish that I had to come to a land that was seeming I would not be an outlaw. I'll get that part next time. But more importantly is the idea that things that shouldn't happen and then do. Anything that you thought when you're a child, not knowing that something could outbreak, well, that was probably when you were introduced to the chicken pox. But besides that, what else could happen? When you look at food and then it's boiled, all the nutrients from it has been boiled away, but it's still food. Check. Numbers and statistics, if they run analytics, how can there be 3 different things and they're all the same? Is an innuendo where if you take like a blueprint and then all the angles are correct and it's just a giant sheet, you can project that and make actual lines on the house and have that be like a CGI model. Whereas in medical, you can take anybody's body part and put it into like a CAT scan and then break it down into a blueprint. If the angles and geometry are right, your heart, it's beating and it's tied in a knot from its chambers. So those pressures at the chambers are like a knot where it folds through a loop and tightens. And ropes are made up of little fibers, and your heart is made up of heart tissue, muscle tissue. And so when you're loosening those fibers, it's playing with the chambers and it's always pumping in and out. So regardless, That's what's occurring. And you can get more and more into the chemical structures that aren't stripped out of anything. Anything that's boiled reduces its chemical structure. So you can fake the funk and see what's good with a bad heart. Make fun of the Grinch and show how that image is possible, what they made on the X-ray. Also, that the Grinch was elusively, if you just leave stuff out and then only mention key parts, people look over the key parts and just understand the climax of the movie. Alice in Wonderland, lost in a hole, and then she came back out of the hole. Was she alive or dead? If she was dead, it would make perfect sense, because nothing in there is plausible after falling into a hole. So in that ideology, through the looking glass is just a continuum of her being unconscious, or a projection off of like a blueprint. When you make a projection on a blueprint, you really can. And with math graphs, you can add in all the different types of math graphs and understand how that works, because there's a lot there where you can actually make stuff happen. And then 3D printing model, I mean, that could be, you can make base pairs of like smaller things inside the graph to make it more accurate and minimize them down and play with scaling of the light projection, because all projecting light is just bringing it into focus, and it'll look exactly the same as a 3D model. So if you can put 2 and 2 together, you can get pretty accurate estimates and allocations of whatever you're trying to handle. But you have to know the chemical components or its makeup, and that's what you're changing the dimensions on when you're trying to do proper measurements. The third thing I wanted to say, and I couldn't get it off my chest, was when people don't want to talk about something and they only want the numbers to favor them, they'll say percentage-wise, or they'll show some screwy fraction that it kind of addresses the thing, but only in favor of them, because they are not willing to get down to brass tacks and talk pennies to the dollar of what the heck they're getting paid to look at. The research numbers, they'll only say the numbers if it favors them, or they'll just relate it to a percentage that, well, it's gone up 50%. Thanks for checking in. There's a difference in a tire that isn't made and a tire that is made. That aside, there's a difference between a hand-tossed and a pre-made pizza. So the more that, if you could follow this logic, the easier that this is going to be to understand why it's impossible. If I was to hand-toss a pizza and get every granule inside that dough to match the heat signature of the coils that heat up, or the oven's base of the wall that heats up, it would cook well enough to the degree of almost any, because the symmetry would be like a puzzle fitting into the missing piece of a puzzle set. But before that puzzle is set, if you were to handcraft a tire where the threading underneath a tire, it's like a baseball if you've ever seen a tire come off and get shred. When the tire has being made by hand, if you make the insides of it really well done, then you can slant the tires on an angle so it's only running on its edge. This is called diamond tires. And then you can make these really expensive the more that you cake up the inner lining, if it's more and more handmade. If you handmade it so well that each granule of pavement that you're going to drive in a race for a route or a lap, if that matched every single lining with the thread onto the handmade rubber sealant, however you make tires with rubber if you made it by hand, then that would be a really expensive tire, but it would be tiresome, and you don't want to ever have to do that for your job and have that be illogical, because who would go to that extent? Well, if you paid enough money, you can get whatever you want, but that at some point is illogical. The second thing I'd like to bring to the attention is that a barn, I heard for the first time, I'll never forget it, was called a pole. A red pole was a red barn. And so if you go far away from a barn, it's going to look smaller and smaller, like from an aircraft, like a helicopter, and looking downwards, it will look more and more just like a dot. And so I guess it's like a pole. At the top of a pole isn't, of course, a dot. It isn't, of course, a dot. A dot's a circle, right? Boom. Imagine saying that before your life ended, being like, what? And then he shoots you with a bullet so you can see the tip of it, if it were or weren't a circle or a dot. Thanks for watching. But no, totem poles as well. They're a pole, but they're supposed to be an animal. So you've got all these animals together on top of each other, and now it's called a totem pole. So the logic with the barn, while you're bringing stocks and animals, hay bales, all that stuff is inside of the barn, almost as if the animals are on top of each other on a pole. Well, now your barn has stuff within it, about it, on top of it, being considered a pole. And that's just what it is. One last thing before the fires, there's fires going on, and so a lot of smoke gets blown upwards. The cloud coverage, as you can tell, is immense. But of the morning dew, I noticed there's not a lot of morning dew out. It's probably because everything's dry, because it's burning up in the forest fires. So the heat, when it hits high noon at high sun, the sun's going to be above all these clouds and be extra hot, because it's going to have the flames waning in off of its radiation heat, sun rays. Double entendre, it's just extra elusive, because hashtag extra elusive. Due to the cloud coverage being more than normal. And it's secondly odd, hashtag secondly odd, because there's a fire going on in the forest right now, and it's big, but it's cold. It's making for it to be extra cold despite a fire being hot. It's just in the morning it gets a double entendre, because the sun is still below the cloud coverage as it rises to high noon.